Welcome, everybody, to the Assertive Podcast. I'm Erica.
I'm Jess.
And we are licensed professional counselors in Texas, reviewing Am I the Asshole Reddit threads to help you learn skills for communication, healthy boundary setting, and assertive interpersonal functioning. We are back for season 2.
Whoa.
Yay for season 2.
Huzzah, yeah.
Around Christmas, we dropped the Emotions 101 episode. You guys have really loved that one, which we expected to happen. Emotions are complicated. And so season 2, we're going to take 1 week to focus on each of the 6 core emotions. We're going to look at what it looks like when those emotions become imbalanced. We're going to look at how do you tell if you're feeling this emotion and body cues. We'll review the data that emotion is giving you, coping skills for when we become unbalanced in our emotions and how we can try and self-regulate there. What else are they going to get?
I think you got it. Yeah, we'll just use the same framework. We're going to pull an Am I the Asshole Reddit thread and talk about kind of the overarching emotion there. And then we'll just use that as a framework to kind of dive a little deeper. And yeah, I think each episode will kind of have its special kind of little piece to it. So I'm looking each of those emotions will have their own thing going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm excited.
I am too. I've been ready for season 2.
I know. We love talking about the emotions stuff. I think clients really like this too, because I think the concept that like we don't need to change our emotions, we just need to figure out what they're telling us. That I think can take away a lot of the is something wrong for me for feeling this way, which I think a lot of people seem to be normalized there.
Yeah. Not necessarily even is something wrong, but should I be feeling this?
Yeah.
And so if it's like, should I be angry? I mean, half of the Am I the Asshole post is, am I wrong for feeling angry? Or am I wrong for feeling XYZ? And it's like, well, if we understand what data that emotion is giving you, you can answer that for yourself. You don't need to go seek external validation.
Yeah, I love that. And so that, if you haven't listened to the Emotions 101, definitely go back and start there. But, the framework, there's 6 core emotions. 3 of them are energizing, 3 of them are energy depleting. And so each of them they're all healthy to have as long as they're within their appropriate amplitude. So the goal of healthy coping is to keep the emotion within its function and then keep it within a range that's manageable. So we'll focus on how to do that so that we can have emotions, not feel that there's something wrong for having them, but then know what to do with them so that they can be resolved and moved through.
Yep. Also, part of that is context, making sure our emotion is appropriate for the context. Because even if, we discuss kind of these unbalanced states of emotions, there are going to be contexts of life where that's actually appropriate. You should probably be a little imbalanced there. You should be more depressed. You should be more stressed out here. That's completely normal.
Yeah. There's times to feel really happy and times where sadness is appropriate. Yeah, that's a good point. So we're starting off with the first one, which is joy. Do you want to read this post for us and get us started?
Absolutely. Today's post is titled, Am I the Asshole for, quote, rubbing my family's face in my great life? My husband and I got married last weekend. I come from a very poor background, and I have a huge family that's from a small town. My family's very close, even if I've always been the weird and different one. I've moved away, etc. My husband comes from a huge, more middle-class family. One of my favorite things to do is host and entertain. I think life can be hard, and making people comfortable or showing them a great time is a really worthwhile thing. It's also fun for me, like a giant crafting project to plan an event. I love it. My husband does very well, and I've been lucky to have a great career and do the same. Our wedding was the only time likely for all of these people we both loved to be in the same place to meet and celebrate together. So we wanted to make it special and magical. We were very clear that gifts were not necessary, and I set aside a fund for my aunt and I to coordinate covering any expenses for people who wanted to come but couldn't afford the hotel and outfit, etc., but handle that very quietly. I know a huge wedding is a waste of money to many people, but it just isn't to us. We did 3 days of events and covered meals and open bars for 300 people. We had a short Cirque type performance, a big welcome party with a kind of carnival for kids, gift bags for everybody, and lots of surprises.
Wow.
It was so fun to watch all the joy and everyone smiling and being happy. Everything was optional. We shamed no one who came to only one part or couldn't swing it. At brunch, the final day, my aunt pulled me aside and asked me to go to my cousin's room and console her. She said she had been sobbing all night and morning because her wedding, which is in a few months, would be nowhere near this level, and she thought all of our family would hate it and judge her. My heart broke. Every wedding I've been to with my family has been low-key, maybe in a barn or a rec center or someone's backyard. No one has ever judged or looked down on this, nor would I. We just have different styles, and we always have a great time at everyone's event. I left my guests at brunch and spent the better part of an hour with my cousin, trying to assure her of all of the above. I told her a wedding is a celebration of love, not money, and that we were all very excited. She finally got weirdly calm, stopped crying, then just looked me dead in my eyes and said something like, "Well, you don't need to worry about it because you're not invited anymore," then locked herself in the bathroom. I came back to brunch and most everyone was gone. I was crying, but didn't want to make a scene and just got out as fast as possible. My husband keeps telling me not to take it to heart, but I hate that something we worked so hard to make fun and memorable for people ended up making someone I love feel terrible. Now my aunt has started telling people I just did this to, quote, rub my family's face in my great, fancy, rich life. I feel sick. I was so happy and proud, and now I feel so stupid. Did I really fuck this up that badly? Am I the asshole?
Gosh. Yeah, you can't expect 300 people to come and everybody be happy, right? We should know better than that. Wow, she's got some haters from her family.
Yeah. Well, and I think for our author, she's having so many emotions throughout this experience, and I think that it's just typical for the human experience.
For it to just feel kind of intense and sloppy sometimes.
Yeah. This is being a human. Life is messy. Your emotions are going to be messy in relation to life's messiness.
I've recently, the last several weeks, been like, you know what? That's where I think the substance of life comes in, is like the messiness of it. You know, it's something to be embraced. I think it had some meat to the bones. Yeah, it's not like the cousin who was crying, her mom is the one who's doing some more shit talking. So they probably got a little bit of like haters, a little genetic quality in that little family unit. Huh?
Is it a genetic quality or a learned behavior?
It's true. It's a nature versus nurture. It could be a both and. Probably on that, huh? Man, I'm sure, I'm also imagining. Okay, let's just assume. If I just spent like $1 million and I had just gotten married, those are all stressful things, and I was hosting all these people. This is going on for 3 days. I can imagine just being raw, like emotionally just blitzed at the end of it. Because I'm kind of thinking, like, I don't know that I would be upset by somebody being dramatic. I'm not really one to take that kind of bait. If one of my cousins was like, "You're just rubbing this on our face," I'd be like, "This is you got some you things going on." But I can see how I might be a little bit more reactive. If after this whole buildup has been going on for multiple days, that maybe I would be a little I don't know, more sensitive maybe to something like that.
Yeah. Tolerance. I think in maybe mental loads, we kind of talked about assessing where you're at that particular day and what fights you're going to take on and what you're going to let go. Mm-hmm. And typically we take on fights when we have lower energy because we just don't have the energy to let shit go, basically.
Yeah, like delegating and prioritizing is difficult. So we just take everything on there. Yeah. So the author was obviously experienced, and also I want this author as like my friend. I don't necessarily want to be someone who has the urge to host a meeting. I want somebody like that to hang out with. She sounds like she's probably a good time. Yeah. And is very generous, and she has a lot of really good qualities, I think, this person.
Yeah. She's definitely the planning friend. You guys are gonna go do some. She's like planning it start to finish,
which I love. Yeah, come aboard. I like going along for the ride. She said, I think life can be hard, and making people comfortable or showing them a great time is a really worthwhile thing. I think that's a really cool.
Yeah,
that's a generosity and altruism that I admire. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Joy. So where do you want to start here? Like, what's the function of joy? I guess
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah, take it.
I say the function of joy is to let us know what's going well. I think it makes life worth living, and I think brings about satisfaction. I think it lets us know when how we're spending our time is aligned with what's important to us. So that's my spiel. What do you think? Which sounds obvious. Like, we don't think about the function of joy. We all like feeling it. It's nothing to be dissected a lot, but like, what do you say is a function of joy?
I would say the exact same thing, almost verbatim, actually. But like my short spiel, I say is joy tells us we're living a value congruent life.
Yeah, which we'll get into that when we do like the second part of this episode of coping. So yeah, good tee up for the values there.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yep,
So same page club there. So so and again, joy is a good. They're all good emotions. They're all healthy to have. Just like with anything else, too much of a good thing or too little of a good thing is problematic. Talk to us about the kind of the unbalanced presentations of joy and what that looks like.
Yeah. So when we talk about unbalanced, because there are just so many emotional states, we do not have the capacity to go through all of these the
possible points on the spectrum, kind of.
Correct. Yeah. So we just talk about the polar ends, which again, there are going to be times in life when it's appropriate to be at the polar ends. Too much joy, we talk about it in terms of mania or being manic. I try and like describe this to clients who have maybe never experienced this. This is usually like my clinically depressed folks who like feeling a baseline of joy is a struggle, so they're probably not familiar with excess joy.
Yeah.
I think Tigger is a good example. He's just always happy and bouncy, a bit impulsive. He doesn't really think things through too much. He's just like, fuck it, yeah, let's do it, YOLO.
He's hypersexual, maybe abuses substances. Classic Tigger, huh?
Classic Tigger. You could also look at it as another one I use is Tasmanian Devil. Yeah, he has more of that kind of destruction aspect that we kind of see in manic behavior. We can engage in some self-destructive behavior, which would be like acting out sexually, substance use. I have a few clients, what this presents at is shopping. Like we're spending, excess spending, that's the word, yep. I was trying to think if there were others that my clients will say like, oh, this is what I do. We have grandiosity, so inflated self-esteem, feeling invincible or nobody can touch me, I'm the shit.
Yeah, I get a lot of like hyper fixations and staying up all night to focus on a particular project. I have a lot of that go on with my clients too.
Kind of the obsessive thinking and
I get stuck in that kind of.
Yep. Times where it's appropriate to veer towards the too much end of the spectrum. We think about when maybe a lot of good things are happening in our life. With my clients, I'll say like if I win the lottery and my dog who ran away came back and I got a call and it was mistaken identity and my grandma's not actually dead, I'm probably going to be on like cloud 9. This will make more sense when I say depression.
Oh my God, like people are like resurrecting. I'd be like, holy God, what a day. Yeah.
What a day.
What a day to be manic. Yeah. Some being excitable a bit would be appropriate because you'd be like, this is fucking crazy. I can't believe this just happened.
Best day ever.
Best day ever. Yeah. You're feeling good.
Yep. On the reverse, too little joy, we say is depression. This is loss of interest in things that you usually enjoy doing. This could be feelings of fatigue and just kind of blah. Sleep problems. Sometimes depression, it's not necessarily you can't fall asleep, but maybe you can't stay asleep or you're feeling really restless. You may have appetite changes. For some, they lose their appetite. For some, they overeat.
Yeah, like drop off in, just like the opposite, drop off in libido is a big one. A lot of social withdrawal. Maybe you're not leaving the house. Maybe you're finding your room is a lot darker than it used to be. Your inability to like meet like responsibilities, like you can't adhere to your laundry and your dishes, and everything's feeling really overwhelming.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are more in there, but those are probably what people can kind of look through their life and be like, oh, yeah, I'm seeing some of this. Again, there are times when it's appropriate to be depressed. A lot of shit could be going wrong. If you just lost your job, your dog ran away, and then you got a phone call that your grandma died, you're probably having some depression. That sounds like a shitty day.
Yeah, that'd be like we wouldn't call that like a clinical presentation of depression. That's appropriate situational depression.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Which is still a good reason to get therapy. And some people even, especially after a death or something, they might need even medication support for the first year. Just because it's not an organic cause doesn't mean it's not serious,
Correct. Yeah. And I do say that. I'll say now, if it's been 5 years and, I've gotten a new dog, I've gotten a new job, but I can't really enjoy anything because I'm still really sad because my grandma died.
That's a little long. We got some issues going on there.
I got stuck, right? I got stuck in these polar ends that maybe I ended up there by very natural causes, and it was fine that I was there.
Yeah.
But then I didn't have the skill set to get myself out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So joy is the emotion. It's one of the energizing ones.
Mm-hmm.
In its appropriate context, it helps us live our values and helps us do things that are meaningful to us. Lets us know when we're doing that. Too much of it is manic, which would present in bipolar or some other high intensity situations. But it's also nice to have a really fun day.
Mm-hmm.
Not enough of it would be depression. So like a lack of joy, and that can be clinical depression, such as there's some kind of organic cause going on, that lack of neurotransmitters that's causing us to feel sad, or it's situational because we're actually experiencing grief or like a loss.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
How do you know when you are feeling, I guess, joy, we could use other words, would be like, happiness, content. I even think like playfulness or like silliness and humor can be on that spectrum. Delighted. I don't know, what other words do you use for happy or joy?
Like going up, excited, ecstatic, elated, jovial.
Ooh. Most of us don't use jovial or elated or things
Mm-hmm.
like that, but that's kind of just like finer refining that flavor, to give you more ways to describe yourself.
Yep.
Okay. So how do you know when you're feeling ecstatic and happy and satiated? What's it feel like in your body?
I think naturally I feel lighter. I'm usually smiling without trying to smile.
Yeah. I'm smiling now just thinking about things that make me happy.
Yeah. I'm sure like you guys are all familiar with this. You look at your phone and you're reading a text from somebody and you're smiling and somebody's like, who's got you smiling like that? Like you didn't realize you were smiling, but you were smiling.
Mm-hmm. I feel like a little like flutter in my heart and that, like energize, that lightness to things.
Yeah. Yep. Because it's the energizing emotion, it's easier to get shit done.
That's so true. It's like that low activation energy. Like I don't need a lot to get over the starting hurdle. I can just kind of plow right through it because I'm feeling good and I got some momentum.
Yep.
Yeah, I do that too. I get into like, joy will bring me into like a flow state, I think sometimes.
Yeah.
Like kind of content, like doing my thing, lose track of time.
Yeah.
Man. That's it. I think, the hedonic effect was something we wanted to talk about in this one. I think I first started learning about this from a documentary, but I think we have kind of misconceptions about happiness and satisfaction in like general. But one thing that's interesting about people is that we tend to overestimate how happy something is going to make us and for how long. And we do it on the flip side of like how devastated we'll feel, then how long we'll feel devastated. Mm-hmm. So what actually happens, let's say we have the day of mania. We've won the lottery, our dogs come back, and it turns out our grandma is in fact not dead. We would say, oh my gosh, I'm going to be happy for years. I've just had this wonderful day. Winning the lottery is going to feel so good. I'm never going to be sad again. Yeah. What we find is after about 3 weeks, we hit a plateau. So what makes us feel elated for 3 weeks becomes like our quote unquote new normal. And we hit like that baseline. And so then we get disappointed of like, oh my gosh, I kind of just feel how I used to feel. And so we see, I don't know if you have this. I have a ton of clients who have the urge, as I like being nomadic too, like, oh, I just need to move somewhere and have a fresh start. It's a joke of like, you're gonna follow yourself there, right? Like you're also gonna be there, so you get this novelty and this disruption for about 3 weeks, and then you kind of settle back in where you're like, damn, I still have these same habits, or I'm still bothered by these things.
Mm-hmm.
And to manage the hedonic effect, we don't need to inflict misery to talk ourselves down, but it's just having realistic expectations of like emotions, right? So it's when we're feeling really good, we can appreciate it, and love it, but not hang on to it too tightly. We need to allow ourselves to have an emotional state that changes. And then also, when we're feeling really low, we're not going to feel that way for forever, right? So we don't have to anticipate the rest of our lives feeling miserable, because emotional states are not that stable, So I like talking about the hedonic effect too, of like, hey, just because you snapped your fingers, life's not going to feel that much different. It will for a little bit. Then you're back to feeling how you felt,
How do you manage or talk to clients in relation to the hedonic effect with maybe that concept of waiting for the other shoe to drop? And how do we manage enjoying the moment and that presence of now with what we call kind of like future tripping and waiting for that other shoe to drop?
I think I've talked about this. I think that can also be a function of anxiety, right? When you're used to stuff, say you've been depressed for a long, long time and you get on medicine, or you're doing therapy, or you're doing evaluations and you start feeling better. It's kind of like, well, this is suspicious, So I think a lot of it is just saying, just be in the moment. So part of it's just like learning to tolerate of like, these emotions will all come back around, right? Just because if you feel really good for a week, you probably won't feel that way for forever, but you will feel good again. So I think part of it is I try to work with them with the distress tolerance and reminding them, when things are not great, this is temporary. You will also feel good again. You've been here before. What do you think has helped you in the past kind of climb out of a low motivation rut? And so it's just kind of bringing that back of like, what to do here. This isn't going to last forever. But I think a lot of what we do as therapists is just help people cope with the idea that we're not happy all the time. And that can be kind of devastating to deal with day to day, because we want to feel that way. And a lot of it's just like, you're a person and you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
That maybe is a cop-out answer, but I'm pretty gentle on that, of being like, just because you don't feel good doesn't mean something's wrong. Sometimes something's wrong. But sometimes you're just, maybe it's hormonal, or you just woke up not feeling great today, or you didn't have the best day with nutrition and your body's just kind of feeling crappy. So try not to like overreact to the uncomfortable times. It's kind of how I don't give them too much energy sometimes, but notice them.
I like that.
How do you talk about it?
I help them appreciate the moment, and I usually point out the patterns.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times when we're in it, we don't see it. One of the great things about going to therapy is you have somebody who's with you through all of this, and they are trained to observe and notice.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of my clients, I'm like, oh, you had an easy week? Thank God you don't have anything to talk about. I was like, let's shoot the shit. Talk to me about your favorite shows. Like, what's going on? Give me like some gossip, some tea. Like, what are we doing? And we really have a chill session. And I say, you were about due for one of these. Our sessions have been pretty heavy. A lot of shit's been going on. I knew it was coming up. It had to. Life always balances itself out.
Yeah. I will literally be like, okay, I'm noting today, March 15th, you said that you're having a pretty good day, because next week I'll talk to you in the world day, I'm going to remind you, hey, on March 15th, I'll tease them. Like, so I'll have like actual like dates. Yeah, on this day you said that. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
and then I also
patterns.
Yeah. And so then I'll also like do what you do, and I remind them of the pattern. I was like, well, remember, like, this is just that time of year where it gets really stressful at work and you get this huge relief. I have a couple of clients who work in like accounting or CPAs, tax industry. Like,
tax time. And
like come May, this is going to start to feel better. Like, you're just literally in the middle of it. This is okay. You've done this before. We do this every single year. You know you can do this. Like, your only other option is to change careers, because this is your career field. This is a given.
I think and that's so normalizing. I think takes so much pressure off of like, I don't need to feel any other way than how I feel right now. I don't like that I'm not feeling joyful. I want to feel joyful, but I know that nothing's wrong. I don't need to like respond or change this emotion right now. I think that is super therapeutic. Just be like, you're stressed. Yep. I'm gonna be stressed, and then you won't be, and you've been stressed before, and I think you're gonna be okay.
Yeah. And then we talk about like small things we can do, because sometimes in that situation, like where it's a work stress and we have big projects or deadlines coming up, we can't necessarily change the amount of stress.
Right.
But maybe we can incorporate small nuggets of joy. Are they going to be huge? Maybe not, because you don't have the time for it. But what can we do? So I had one client, I was like, I want you to take a 15-minute break every single day. I don't care if you stand in your office and stare out the window for 15 minutes. I don't care if you walk outside. I don't care if you go to your car and scream or cry. For 15 minutes, I want you to get up, walk away from your desk, and stop working.
Yeah. Come out for air.
And like that was our kind of nugget of, wasn't necessarily joy, but kind of nugget of stress relief in there. So sometimes it's just small things.
It's like the little, and that's even, with the hedonic effect, I think a lot of people have, it's some kind of sentence of, I'll be happy when. Yep. I'll just feel a lot better when I get out of Texas. I'll just feel a lot better when I meet that person. I'll feel a lot better once I get a good paying job. And I'm like, if you're always waiting for things to be perfect, you're going to do a whole lot of nothing. And again, that will make you happy for about 3 weeks. And then you're going to be back again to like, just like you said, I'm like, how can we start living your values now? Maybe you have the value of peace. Like, what's keeping you from taking that cup of coffee in the morning? Like, you're able to find joy right now. You don't have to wait for all these things to change because nothing's really going to change and impact that much. It will briefly, but like, it's like a decision every day to like live congruently with that.
Yeah. With that, I don't know if you get this with your clients, but I see it a lot with like lifestyle changes. I'll just wait until X. I'll wait until Monday, or I'll wait until after the holidays, or I'll wait until I move out of my parents or get rid of my roommate or whatever that is. And then I'll start working on this. I get like some of those are going to be easier to check off, but I bet there are some like foundational baby steps we could take. And I bet it'll make the process once you do move out feel less daunting if we do some groundwork now.
I hear that a lot, and I think a lot of that comes from black and white thinking also, because it's saying like, I have to do something perfectly. I don't feel capable of doing it perfectly yet. Where it's like, if we were to just say, I'm just going to start at 5%, you don't have to, I'll start eating better once the holidays are done. I feel like that's a really common one, where it's like these patterns of self-sabotage between now and then are not going to help you with your goal. But if you say, I'm going to make 5% better choices today, like that's how change happens. But like, I think it's this artificial idea, like people expect, I'm just going to feel the surge of motivation and then I'll suddenly have this willpower to do all these things differently. It's like, no, you are not. You are going to have to wake up one day and decide to do things different. But if you're waiting till you quote unquote feel like it, you're never going to feel like doing something really hard and inflicting suffering on yourself. You're not going to. So like, you have to decide to do that now.
Yep. I always talk about like changing the exception. So like I'm going to change my eating habits after the holidays. That means the exception right now is like, I get to eat like shit now, and then after the holidays, I don't. If we change that to, I'm going to implement my changes, and on this day when I have my company Christmas party and Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and New Year's Eve, I'm going to eat like shit. That's only 4 or 5 days of the whole month versus you just had a whole month wasted where you maybe could have made some progress.
Oh, so it's almost like a harm reduction of like, okay, if we want to have some kind of free falling, let's limit the space in which we're doing that.
Well, and I think not that this particular episode is on lifestyle changes, but anytime you're trying to make changes, going in with the mindset that you'll be perfect, you're already being self-destructive. You're going to fail. Yeah. It's not going to happen. So if we go in and we start saying like, oh, I can start making changes and give myself these exceptions, you're setting up this compassion framework for later, because something's always going to come up, and that's just life. Yeah. Something will always come up. And so instead of saying it's a wash or I ate terrible today, so today's just a whole waste, it's I had a shitty breakfast. I should maybe do a reset and try again at lunch.
Yeah, these self-sabotaging patterns. And I think, the value that comes with living a value-congruent life is we don't have to have the shoulds. Like when we're living in a way that we're comfortable with, we get to have peace about our nutrition and our movement and how, what we do for work and how we interact with other people. And so we get a lot of reprieve from like the mental torture we can inflict on ourselves sometimes. Like the way of even having more relaxation is just being really aligned with those values. Because I think that takes like the internal conflict out, which is exhausting.
I think it gives you permission to say no a lot.
Yeah.
It's like, that doesn't bring me joy, so I'm not doing it. And with everything, there's balance. Like if your partner wants to go do XYZ, like go to a sports event and you're not really into sports, there may be like one or two times you're going to like suck it up and go and support your partner. But every other time you're like, that's like a you and your friends event. You guys can have that. I don't want that one.
Yeah, and maybe I don't value sports, and maybe I value partnership, right? So that's me living. That's making a compromise of how I prefer for that time to be spent, because overarching partnership is more important to me than what I go do with my Saturday afternoon or something like that. But like, yeah, that's a really good point, that you get to choose what drains you and what you want to do.
Yeah. And I think if we're making conscious choices, we have less resentment about it than feeling like we got forced into doing something. And my clients come into sessions a lot and say that. And I was like, nobody, like, did they hold a gun to your head? I'm so confused. What do you mean they forced you?
Yeah, but like, you can say no, right? Like, you don't have to let that guy borrow your truck. You could just tell that person no, it's like, oh yeah, I didn't really think about that. Yeah. I say no probably too often. I need to work on saying yes. I know I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. Like, my family just knows that I'm kind of that way though.
Yeah.
What about, like, I have people who I think want to be positive to a point that is not reality. Okay, there's 6 core emotions. It's not that we spend each, 15% of our time in each one of these emotions. If we're, we have our depressive types and kind of our anxious types, and people who are kind of naturally easygoing. But, you're not going to spend most of your life in joy. That's probably not going to happen. Life is hard. There's a lot of things our bodies are responding to. How do you deal with kind of that toxic positivity that people who just do not want to acknowledge or give space to negative things?
That one's a bit difficult because I think it varies person to person. I think some people have low distress tolerance. And so toxic positivity is more or less the only coping skill they have. And it's an avoidant technique. If I don't acknowledge the shitty things or like say that they're terrible, then I don't have to deal with the distress of terrible things.
Yeah.
So for some of my clients, it's an avoidance tactic. For others, I think it's an overcorrection where they're maybe trying to do like gratitude list or have positive thinking, and they just overcorrected.
Yeah.
And so it's when I figure out like, what is our motivation for this? Do we have distress tolerance? And then it's, how do we find a middle ground? How do we accept that, yep, we had good things that happened in our day today and we had bad things, but saying like the bad things aren't as bad because good things happened, or saying the good things can't be as good if we acknowledge the bad, isn't real life. Like, they can both exist in that same space. Your day can be both. And I use that phrase almost every single day. Both can be true.
Yeah, I think there's this desire of almost like kind of labeling everything as a whole, of like, this day was bad, or my day was, or whatever. I think it's like there was a lot of variety that happened throughout the day, and saying this day had, I prefer the question of like high and low. What was the highs? What were the lows? Because there's going to be some, and I've not, I think you probably did this when we worked with clients, where they'd be like, no highs, no lows, or they would say that there was no lows, everything's great. And I'm like, were you conscious? Like, have you been using? Because you've been awake, you've had some shit go on, I'm sure. Yeah, like, this is not helping the case. Like, this is not therapeutic, right? Like, you're making it worse, right? Just participate in therapy. But I think, yeah, like the idea of, I don't want to acknowledge negative things because then I have to deal with it, or it makes me feel bummed out for a bit. So I'm just not gonna, everything's good, not gonna talk about it. I see that happen a lot. And I think some people who maybe, I think, if we are maybe inclined to some mental filtering, or maybe we lean towards depression, I do think it can be helpful to like really try to notice things that are positive and to give more energy to that, because I can't think it can change your mood state, but I think accuracy is most important there. So we don't want like an imbalance, we just want to be accurate. So we want to have accurate inventory of what we liked and accurate inventory of what we did not prefer, but I think sometimes they can go the opposite way too with depression, where maybe we aren't noticing that as much. So it's a way of like retraining our brain, but it's kind of an overcorrection, like you said. It's a way of like learning a new tool, so we get a little imbalanced as we're figuring it out.
Yep.
But yeah, gratitude list, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Do you find most people have a pretty good time like recognizing when they're happy, like a pretty easy time? or is it hard for people to notice it sometimes?
Maybe an overgeneralization, but I think the majority of people I interact with personally and professionally can tell when things are going well.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think they can tolerate that. I think the contentment, that maybe nuance of joy,
Yeah,
where
it's like,
maybe something like super good hasn't happened, but we've had a pretty okay day. Nothing really terrible happened. Nothing really great happened. We're just, you know, our day was at our baseline. It didn't go up. It didn't go down. We just stayed steady. I
yeah.
think they have a harder time of noticing that. And if there's contentment, they tend to put that in the negative bucket. Like, I had a bad day.
I totally agree with you. Or even I'll say, so it sounds like things are going pretty well. And I'll say, yeah. I said, are you feeling satisfied? I don't know. Like that contentment and being satiated, sensation of feeling satisfied or content. I think people feel like it's boredom. That's why I think it's like wanting this like disruption and this excitement a lot. And I think we have a really hard time, like when things feel easy, it feels like a void or some kind of emptiness, I've noticed.
Yeah.
Which, yeah.
I see this a lot with people who have really chaotic childhoods. Like, chaos is the normal. So if their system is not, in this hypervigilant or hyperactive state, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Or it feels like this doom because they know the chaos is going to kick in. And this is where I see clients who are like kind of drama starting because they're just so used to chaos that their baseline is actually chaos. And I was like, that is your baseline, but that's not where it should be.
Yeah, and even I think a lot of just probably in general, like emotionally kind of reactive clients, because when they're in like a chill state, they know it's about to swing and they just don't know which way it's headed. And that can feel really uneasy too. So even like a day that's been perfectly peaceful, it's kind of like the calm before the storm sensation. I think that can be kind of anxiety inducing or feel like something's like some imminent doom's approaching, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think people have an easier time noticing little happy things or little depressing things?
A little depressing things for sure.
Yeah, they get that like
100%.
more credence or whatever.
Yeah. I think people can notice small things that are going incorrectly, but they don't notice small things that are going correctly. I especially notice this in self-examination. So when clients are working on goals, if they didn't like check off the goal, but they maybe took one or two steps in that direction, they'll say, I didn't make any progress this week. And then I'll be like, tell me more about that. Why do you feel like that? What happened? And I'm like, it's true, we didn't hit our end goal, but like, look at all this stuff you did. You didn't used to do all of this. We're like, oh, you're right. I didn't.
Yeah. I noticed that too. I did a lot of like being like, well, it sounds like this one thing went wrong, but a lot of things you did really well that day. Yeah. I have like personally, I'm kind of an irritable person. I have my pet peeves and like I could be having the greatest day in the world, but if I get in my car and my freaking Apple Play is not working or something's going wrong, I will be like, yeah, like I'll be yelling. I'm like, nothing can go right. And then I'm mad. And I'm like, that's one small little thing that I let it like totally derail me. Like there's traffic. I have like all these like peeves that just like the toaster oven, all these things that irritate me. So like my irritability will pull me out of a state. But there's a lot of times too where I'll just be usually I'm outside and I'll have this moment of being like, oh, what a day. What a beautiful day. All is right in the world. And it'll be this profound moment of contentment, but it's in a I'm just taking the dogs for a walk or something, so it kind of depends on what state I'm in. I think of what I'm open to. But yeah, I know people definitely score keep, that's for sure. And they will tally up like perceived failures and successes for sure.
And they usually don't give themselves enough credit for the successes, so they underscore.
Yeah, because we're kind of like focused on like that outcome. So unless against that black and white thinking, unless this one thing gets met, everything else is a failure. Where it's like, okay, that's the baby in the bathwater. I think on your effort there,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It feels weird sometimes to talk about joy and therapy because it's like people don't come to therapy because they're feeling joyful, unless they're like manic and in like an institution or something because they're out of control. But I think, I even like when somebody says, oh, I like this, I enjoyed this thing. I was like, well, what was it about that you liked? Because if we can figure out like the transferable qualities of that, we can figure out all kinds of activities that you enjoyed. Oh, like that. It seemed like you liked that it was social. It was planned in advance. It was something, you got to wear whatever.
It had parking.
Yeah, it had parking. I know you hate that parking anxiety, right? But like, okay, those are the qualities. Same, totally.
Yeah.
Man.
You were talking about people don't come to therapy when they're feeling joy.
Yeah.
And I have occasionally got some folks coming in for contentment or pseudo contentment. So they'll come in and say, my life looks exactly like I wanted it to look.
I've had one of those.
But I feel completely unsatisfied.
Oh.
Like all of these things I thought I valued or I thought I wanted, I have them. Why don't I feel joy? Well, do we feel depressed? Is usually my next question. Because if it's like, well, no, I'm not really depressed. I was like, okay. So is it like contentment, or maybe these aren't actually things we valued? Maybe you went into this career because you thought it would provide financial security, but you don't actually like it, or so then we're going more of like the values route. But when you were talking about people don't come to therapy for joy, I will occasionally get some folks saying, from the outside, everything should be fine, but I don't feel joy.
Yeah, I've had some of those of like situationally, right? Like everything. I have had one person who says like, I have the life that I like and I feel good, but nobody else has this life, and I think something's wrong with me. They just wanted me to say, is it okay that I live this lifestyle? I'm like, yeah, dude, do you? I've had one of those, but I think, and again, it can kind of, that can also come down to expectations of like, when we're looking, lots of times happiness is more of an active emotion, right? I guess that fluttering of your chest, it's really energizing. Contentment is a more quiet state. And sometimes we expect to feel this happiness all the time. And a lot of it's just, we expect too much positive emotion when like kind of a lot of the aim is just being satiated, and I think, in that situation, it's like, okay, if you were, I'm going to be happy when, and now you got this stuff, it's still about deciding to live, be intentional with your values. You can go about your day and go through all the motions, but it's about your headspace when you're in there,
Yeah.
But
when we talk about emotions being, when we talk about emotions being energizing, we expect to have more energy. But with the hedonic effect, if you've checked off all your boxes and we don't necessarily have any goals we're currently working on, after a few weeks, that's going to go back down to your baseline and you are going to be in contentment.
Yeah, because you can't stay in that high arousal state all the time.
Yeah, that's exhausting.
Yeah, our body couldn't do it. We would like burn out and have like adrenal burnout and shit, So our body's naturally going to regulate us. It's a necessary function for like sustainability. So it's not a bad thing. It's just how we're wired.
Yeah.
Because that's energy draining to be excited all the time.
Yeah. So sometimes you're just in contentment. Maybe you expect to have continuous high energy joy. And maybe you've checked off all your boxes, but you put the wrong words in your boxes.
And I think this is, I mean, as therapists, we are people. We obviously bring our own personalities into it. And a lot of times I'm specific in clients I'll talk to about this. And a lot of times I'm like, what's your sense of spirituality? Right? Like if you're day in and day out grinding, but whenever you die, you're just gone and you cease to exist. It's hard to find satisfaction when like it's all leading up towards nothing. Also, if a client, maybe they have, they don't even have to be religious. It doesn't even have to be in the form of like a deity. But I'm like, what's your practice with connecting with things outside of yourself, like bigger picture stuff? Whether it be nature or humanity or some kind of energy, even. But I think sometimes there has to be purpose also. And when we're just focused on ourselves and meeting our own needs, I can feel kind of empty because that's pretty small. Our duration is pretty short. And so I think even sometimes if all these things are going right, but I still feel really empty, I'm like, you probably think about yourself a lot. So I'm going to guess, it's like choosing how to feel happy a lot. So that's something I'll talk about too. It's kind of just bigger connection sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's good.
Well, joy. Okay. So in episode 2, we'll do a quick recap. We'll get into things like delight and values, and then some other coping tools where if we are feeling a lack of joy, which is depression.
Yep.
And then we'll give our am I the asshole verdict.
Yeah. We didn't necessarily talk too much on the post, but we are going to like delve into that a bit more in the next episode, which you guys will get on Thursday. So it is relevant.
Yeah.
We are going to use it.
We're going to use the post. We're going to use them.
Good. But yeah, that's what we have for you guys today. If you guys have thoughts, questions, comments on joy or any of the other emotions, feel free to reach out to us. We're on Instagram at Assertive Podcast, or you can email your questions, assertivepodcast@gmail.com. All right, guys. We will see you next time.